the AFL has spread its international wings and splashed the cash. The rumours about the 2025 Grand Final entertainment were bubbling away and ended up being true. Like always, it might not be for everyone. Besides that big announcement, a few stories in the media are important to go over. One in particular made the AFL very angry and upset with their free-to-air broadcast partner, who revealed an important part of coach and player security. A bizarre incident also caught everyone's attention, and a pre-season game in 2026 might be emulating some of the great games of the past. But let's get to the Grand Final entertainment and the headline act. On the 12th of August, it was officially announced American rapper Snoop Dogg was going to be the showstopper on Grand Final day. It is an interesting choice by the AFL and even felt a little off-brand. Snoop Dogg last made a big appearance during the Super Bowl halftime show in 2022 in Los Angeles. Now that was universally recognised as a massive success, and although it featured many artists, Snoop Dogg was a key member. I'm sure he's getting a nice paycheck to perform. It's an absolute honour to be hitting the stage at the AFL Grand Final, the artist said in a statement released by the AFL. It's one of the biggest events on the Aussie calendar. Now CEO Andrew Dillon assured there will be an Australian artist on the day, but he seemed genuinely excited to land the rapper. Now this old photo surfaced from the Gold Coast where Snoop Dogg was wearing a Suns jersey, but apparently he's a Western Bulldogs supporter. I wonder why. He's been at the Super Bowl, performed at the Olympics, but he's also very famous for his collaborations, so I think if we're looking for Australian artists, there'll certainly be an Australian artist who will be featured on Grand Final day, Dillon said. I understand he follows the Western Bulldogs, so I'm not sure he's necessarily an aficionado, but he certainly knows about the game. It's been a long journey back to Australia for Snoop Dogg, who was even banned from entering the country back in 2007 due to drug charges back in the US. He still has plenty of time to get his act all set in what will be a fascinating watch alongside the game. But something else came across the AFL's desk that made them very angry. It was reported by Caroline Wilson on the Agenda Setters. Now coaches have been under the microscope this year due to some online death threats. Now we all know of the Michael Voss one after the Collingwood game, and then the one to Simon Goodwin that was posted on Twitter. That tweet was a photo of a car parked in Marvel Stadium after Melbourne's lost to St Kilda, essentially saying Melbourne fans no longer had to worry about Goodwin, implying a serious death threat. The AFL has been onto these online acts. Wilson showed vision on the Agenda Setters of this man attending multiple games. It included the individual in Bulldogs gear in round 17, Carlton gear in round 18, and Melbourne gear in round 21. Clearly, it is in relation to coach safety and trying to keep extra security hidden, so you can see why the AFL was so angry that Wilson reported this. Wilson went on, "The AFL are very sensitive about this. They'd rather we weren't reporting it. But I think the fact that he's a pretty prominent looking bloke, and we've spotted him at Marvel Stadium now 3 times since round 17, at a time where there's been some pretty ugly stuff directed at coaches." Post round 21, Goodwin was asked about the man and he said, "The AFL are just taking all the precautions they need, and I think that's what we need in our game. And after last week, we just put ourselves in the hands of the AFL and got just a little bit extra security this week." It's a bit of a shame Wilson reported on the extra security because the man does blend in well with club official uniforms on, but it does show the lengths the AFL are going to keep everyone safe. Now Wilson knew the AFL weren't happy about her report, but it was Eddie Maguire who revealed their true unhappiness. On Footy Classified, Maguire said, "The AFL, forget the anger at the Western Bulldogs. The AFL today are incandescent with rage, having asked Channel 7 specifically because of the delicate nature of personal security and family security of AFL employees, not to run the story about the security guard. Not only did they run the story, this is what they didn't do. We've pixelated the person in question. They run it absolutely open, and the man involved here is an executive and a top professional in undercover surveillance and security." Maguire's finishing statement was the most telling. But the balance between the ton of money and where they are at the moment is more fractious now than it has ever been in a long and storied tradition of the AFL and VFL and Channel 7. Besides that, a few other little things bobbed up. The first involved Brisbane ruck forward Henry Smith. Now, it was this initial photo that sparked an investigation by the AFL into inappropriate touching. Now, that investigation concluded quickly, and with no formal complaint from Nick Blakey, there was no punishment handed out. But later that day, the full vision came out, and it did not look good for Smith. It was embarrassing and bizarre. The only thing Smith could point to explain his actions is Blakey's own actions, which were overlooked a touch. Whether it was on purpose or an accident, as the lizard is on the ground, he does reach up with his right hand and seems to graze Smith in the groin region. Again, it's hard to tell if it was on purpose. So I think that action was why Smith retaliated the way he did, but it was strange and definitely inappropriate. To get away with no punishment is lucky, and again the inconsistency of the AFL in these weird on and off field events continues. And another announcement besides the grand final entertainment was with State of Origin. The last time we saw any kind of State of Origin football was back in the bushfire relief game in 2020, which saw Victoria face an All-Stars team. This time, it's tipped to be a game in Western Australia near the end of pre-season, and comes after the success of the Fremantle vs Indigenous All-Stars game played in pre-season this year. Andrew Dillon on radio said, "Conversations are in progress with state governments and also with our players and our clubs. I'm really keen to see that our best players on the ground at the same time. The All-Stars game at the start of the year showed that there's a real appetite for seeing that. Hopefully, there will be an announcement soon. Now, Western Australia will be one of the teams, and it is expected Victoria will be their opponent. It will excuse all the featured players from playing in their own side's pre-season game, and earlier this year, the State of Origin concept was given full support from the 18 club captains. When to play it was always going to be the big question, but a pre-season time slot seems to make the most sense for everyone." And the final story is to do with Sam McClure. This one made me laugh. On Footy Classified, he reported Carlton had singled out to a current AFL coach about possibly coaching the Blues. He said this live on air, but all of a sudden brought up that when Nine contacted Carlton, they said his story was, quote, untrue, misleading and factually incorrect. Literally, as soon as McClure revealed his story, he then read out those exact words from a Carlton statement. It's got to be the first time ever we've seen a football journalist reveal a story, then immediately read out something else that denies it. McClure was questioned by the panel on the Blues going behind Voss's back, but stuck by what he thinks is the truth, despite Carlton shutting it down immediately and him telling it to the entire country.